Shuna's journey. Shuna's journey? Shuna's journey. I'm gonna go with Shuna's journey. Just because in this part of the world we do the U's, like a Shuna's journey maybe then. I've wasted enough time on this already. Hayao Miyazaki's Shuna's journey by First Second, and yeah, let's have a look at this then. This is a book that was published originally in Japan back in 1983, and when it came out, it was almost Hayao Miyazaki kind of getting it out of his system more than anything, because what he wanted to do with this initially is he wanted to create some sort of animated feature or some animated product out of the back of this story, because as the introduction and the afterword outline, it is inspired by a Tibetan folk tale of a prince or a leader of a tribe going out and basically finding, or stealing rather, sacred grain from the gods and then bringing it back and feeding his people. So it's this very kind of fable-like folk tale, almost kind of fairy tale like story really, that Hayao Miyazaki has adapted and created his own world. Now you are definitely going to pick up some Nausicaa of the Valley of the Winds vibes as soon as you open this book, but essentially it is very different from that as well. You'll get vibes from that because the opening pages show you this desolate community and they're struggling to survive this community. There isn't necessarily a name for the place. Even the opening lines to this book I love, because it's like these things may have happened long ago, they may still be to come, no one really knows. And it just says that the community is at the bottom of a glacier in a valley and they struggle growing, they struggle surviving, but they get by. But then a random traveller is found by the prince of this village, Prince Shuna, and he tells him a story of this mythical golden grain, this grain that they can sow in the land and then reap the rewards and be happy and fed for all eternity, really. Shuna wants the best for his people and wants the best for his community. And so he takes his yakol, which is like this kind of stag type reindeer thing, and he gets on that and travels. Gets bullets, gets weaponry, gets food, gets supply, and then goes out. And a lot of the book is told through narration rather than speech bubbles, so it's very different than your normal comic book, your normal manga, because the way it's laid out is quite different in many ways. It's not this action-packed kind of pacing or anything like that. Not to say that there's not action going on. There is a lot of action going on in different ways, but it's not as frenetic and not as chaotic as you would expect from normal action scenes in manga, really. The whole thing is drawn and painted in watercolour by Hayao Miyazaki. What a stunning book, in fairness. If you're going to buy this, the story itself, you can read it fairly quick. You'll read the whole book in about an hour and you'll find out about Shuna's journey, that he has to travel to the land of the gods to obtain this mythical golden grain, going through landscapes that are desolate, that are full of slave traders and imprisoned and enslaved people. And yeah, it's just an amazing journey, but it's very quick. It's epic in scope, but it's really over very quickly. You can read it all in about an hour or so. But then if you dwell on the pages, if you dwell on this beautiful art created by Hayao Miyazaki, then obviously it'll last longer. And the atmosphere that's created in this book as well is wonderful, I think, because it's very desolate and very bare and barren world. And so when he runs into people, or when he, gets into trouble and action ensues, it kind of really stands out because he's travelling for so many years in this desolate landscape, not coming across anyone, and then out of this sea of desert-like kind of existence comes a person, and is that person going to help him or going to hinder his journey, and how is it going to work into the main story? And I really like the atmosphere that this book created through its art and its storytelling. I will say the story is quite linear, not a bad thing whatsoever, but it's not jumping around in timelines. It starts at the start of Shuna's journey and then follows him through to a culmination of sorts, but it doesn't deviate much in terms of that narrative. It doesn't fly off and tell you backstories of this world. It doesn't tell you future iterations. It's all very linear and very straightforward. It's nowhere near as kind of overly detailed and as intense in many ways as Nausicaa and the Valley of the Winds, because the world building in that is dense beyond belief, which is fantastic, but it's very different. And again, that's where another comparison will fail, because you'll instantly see some comparisons in the art style to Norska, but then the way the story's laid out, the lack of dialogue and speech bubbles, and the lack of kind of this all-encompassing world building where you're finding out about the different communities that Norska is travelling through, that's not here. You're basically a journeying, and it's a very personal story of Shuna, so you follow his story, and then to a certain extent, one of the people that he liberates, in a way, you find out a bit about her story as well, but they are quite linked heavily. But certainly the art is that big draw. The story is familiar and great and interesting, but the art levels it up and changes things massively. And it would have made an amazing animated short or animated feature film or anything like that. And the thing as well, the difference I found about Norska is Norska had the advantage of a lot of dialogue and a lot of exposition work going on to explain the world around it. This didn't, but it did a brilliant job of showcasing the world and how different it was architecturally, and how these different people existed, how they dressed and looked very different from one another. But I would go into it knowing that it's almost bordering on more of an illustrated short story more than a comic or a manga, because of the amount of like narration and dialogue boxes that are separate. It's almost as if the pictures and the words are separated out, and yeah, they tell the story together obviously, but it certainly feels more like an illustrated book rather than your straightforward comic or manga, I would say. It goes without saying as well, Hayao Miyazaki always brings imagination and creativity to anything he does, and that's in spades here as well, because the world he builds is great, but again, you pass through it so quickly that it doesn't tend to explain anything. You don't get much background, so it shows you these glimpses of very weird things, very weird creatures, very strange happenings, things going on with people, things going on with this golden grain, and you just almost kind of see it and pass it by. You don't have the time to have full in-depth conversations about what's going on and how that is or how that isn't, and so it's left to your interpretation, a lot of it. And same as the main character Shuna sees a lot of these things, and he's curious, and he tries to basically explain some of what he's seeing, some of this crazy world that he's going on his travels to, the golden grain held by the gods. But equally, he doesn't dwell on it at all. He kind of just focuses on it briefly and then goes, I gotta get the grain and I gotta get back home. Focused, and that's what this book is very laser focused in telling his story and not being deviated by these weird and wonderful things that it introduces along the way. The hardback is a lovely little hardback. It's about the same size as your Viz Big Edition, so a lot smaller than your standard trade paperback and far smaller than the Nausicaa Valley of the Wind set, obviously. The dust jacket is a wonderful little dust jacket, because I like it when they do that glossy on one part, matte on the other, where there's different textures and different types of finishes on the dust jackets. I always enjoy that with dust jackets. I hate the dust jackets that just print the image and then that's it, really. They don't use that space to do anything texturally or interesting with. So it's nice that they do that type of thing, I think. And First Second, they're a great publisher in general, really. I've got a few more First Second books coming, one by Box Brown and another about Einstein, I think. But yeah, this book is sewn binding as well, I should say, but it's very well made, and the paper inside is matte finish paper. If you're going to get this, get it for the artwork first and foremost, and then let that story unfold. But certainly if you don't like the look of the art style, if you don't like Hayao Miyazaki's art style, you're not going to enjoy this at all, because that art is that biggest draw for me. Seeing Hayao Miyazaki build this world through his art, and yeah, it is just a thing of beauty, really. And it's great that he uses his watercolour skills to full effect in this book as well, because obviously his other main manga, comic book work, illustrated novel, whatever you want to call it, is Nausicaa, and that's all in black and white predominantly, apart from colour now and again in the covers and other places. But to see the full extent of his watercolour skill is wonderful. And Yeah, it's just one of those books that I'll keep coming back to just to stare at more than anything because it's just so pretty. But anyway, that is Shuna's Journey by Hayao Miyazaki. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.